Happy Tuesday. I hope everybody had an awesome spring break. So glad to get to hear from you guys again. And I also hope that everyone had an awesome virtual Monday and got all of their iReady time done. Remember, if not, you have until the end of this week to do it to get your participation grade for it. All right. So before spring break, we started talking about, we started a new standard. Now we're just going to continue that standard, and we're going to be talking about how an author can connect ideas between sentences and paragraphs to support specific points in a text. Our essential question is, what logical connection, whether it be a comparison, cause and effect, or a sequence, exists between sentences or paragraphs in a text? So what we're going to do to start off the lesson today is we're going to watch a BrainPop video on comparing and contrasting. We have watched this video before, and we have learned about comparing and contrasting before, but we're just going to review a little bit of these skills before we get into the actual connections that it makes. We're going to learn some vocabulary that's going to help us with this unit. We're going to read two small passages and compare and contrast them using question stems, and then you're going to complete a compare and contrast activity in Canvas, but you are going to be using a Venn diagram, which we're going to talk about in just a second. So let's start with this BrainPop video. Hopefully this BrainPop video does load. I have tried to record this a couple of times and it hasn't loaded properly, so let's see. And I'm going to cut my camera off.
Wow, did you know that the bull shark has 50 rows of teeth? Bull sharks use their sharp teeth to bite and tear fish, turtles.
All right, it might skip a little bit, but we're just going to try to truck through it.
And other prey. When a tooth breaks, another one moves into its place. You're reading about dolphins? Cool. Dolphins also have sharp teeth, but unlike bull sharks, they don't use them to tear their food. Instead, dolphins grab and swallow their prey whole. You're right, Moby. Sharks and dolphins are alike in some ways, and different in others. Looks like we need to play Sharks versus Dolphins. How do you compare? When you compare, you show how two or more things are alike. You describe how they're similar. Let's see. Guitars and basses are musical instruments. They both have strings and a neck. A guitar can be very loud. A bass can be too. When you compare things, you think about what they have in common. All right, Moby, are you ready to play Sharks versus Dolphins? Here we go. How are sharks and dolphins alike? Right, they're both animals. Yes, sharks can live in the ocean, and dolphins can too. What else do they have in common? Think about how they look and act. Both animals can be gray and white. Yep, they're predators. That means both sharks and dolphins hunt other animals for food. Certain clue words let you know that two or more things are being compared. The words like, alike, same, also, to, both, similar, in common, and the same as can signal comparisons. Now it's time for round 2. How are dolphins and sharks different? How do you contrast? When you contrast, you show how 2 or more things are different. You describe how things are not alike. Let's see. That guitar has 6 strings, but the bass has 4 strings. The guitar can play high notes. However, the bass plays much lower notes. Are you ready? Let's play Sharks versus Dolphins. Okay, Moby, how are sharks and dolphins different? Right, Moby. Sharks are fish, but dolphins are mammals. Right again. Dolphins and sharks breathe differently. Sharks breathe through gills, while dolphins use lungs to breathe. You're on a roll, Moby. Sharks make no sound. Dolphins, on the other hand, click, squeak, and whistle. They use these sounds to communicate and find their way around. Certain clues let you know that 2 or more things are being contrasted. The words different, differ, difference, unlike, although, even though, instead, however, and on the other hand, can signal that the writer is pointing out differences. How do you compare and contrast when you read? When you read, think about how the characters, setting, and other parts of the story are alike and different. In The Ants and the Grasshopper, the ants work hard to collect food for the winter, but the grasshopper relaxes and plays. When winter comes, the grasshopper runs out of food. How are the characters alike? How are they different? You can use a Venn diagram to compare and contrast. A Venn diagram is a graphic organizer that shows how 2 or more things are alike and different. Let's see. The ants are organized, responsible, and they work hard. The grasshopper is lazy, relaxed, and likes to goof off. You write how the characters are alike in the spot where the circles overlap. Both the ants and the grasshopper are insects. They also need to eat to survive. When you compare and contrast characters, you think about them more deeply. This helps you understand the story better. That was a fun game, Moby. You won! Right, your prize. A fork.
All right. So, like I said, we are going to continue working on comparing and contrasting today. So how we're going to do that is first we're going to go over 2 anchor charts. Then we're going to read 2 small passages, and we're going to compare and contrast them by answering 4 questions. And then you guys are going to have a chance to do this in Canvas by yourself, but by using a Venn diagram. So remember, we are talking about text structures. And before break, we talked about cause and effect. But a text structure is how your text is set up. Is it set up by cause and effect, compare and contrast, or sequence? Remember, we've already talked about cause and effect a lot. And that is when an article explains how one thing happens due to another. Think about how blizzards happen. Think about how hail happens. Think about how What else did we talk about? We talked about giraffes being tall. Now we're going to be talking about comparing and contrasting. That is when an article tells how two things are similar and different. And this two little circles here are how we do that. That's called a Venn diagram. That is the kind of graphic organizer that you will use today in your assignment. Next is sequence. And that, if we look at these arrows, it goes 1, 2, and 3. That is when an article puts events in chronological order or steps to a process in order. Remember, anytime we talk about sequence, think back to when Miss Bennett and I made the PB&Js using your steps that you wrote. So comparing and contrasting. So when you compare, that means that you're going to find similarities on two topics. Similarities means how they are the same. When you contrast, you're going to find differences on two topics. Excuse me, my allergies are messing up. Differences are things that are that are not the same. Authors sometimes compare and contrast two topics within one text. Some clue words would be unlikely, similarly, however, and like. How can a Venn diagram be used in a compare and contrast article? Well, if you're reading an article about amphibians, for example, that would be a frog and a toad. The article might tell you a lot about frogs and a lot about toads, and it might tell you how they're similar and how they're different. So a graphic organizer, the two circles, it just helps you put your thoughts on paper and organize them. It helps you organize your thoughts. That's why it's called a graphic organizer. Remember, over here on just the frog side, you're only going to write things about how a frog is different from a toad. Same over here, you're going to write how a toad is different than a frog. And then in the middle, you're going to write how they are similar. So let's read this small passage about rainforests. Let me move my ring light. All right. All right. So rainforests are highly wooded areas that receive a large... Okay, sorry if I glitched a little. Technical difficulties. So again, let's start with this rainforest. So rainforests are highly wooded areas that receive a large amount of yearly rainfall. There are two types of rainforest, temperate and tropical. With all of the trees and leaves, it is normal for much of the sunlight to not reach the floor of rainforests. This limits how much can grow along the ground. However, in areas where the leaves are thinner and sunlight gets all the way to the bottom, the vegetation is extremely dense. Let's look at those words, extremely dense. Well, if I look at this and it says, however, in areas where the leaves are thinner and sunlight gets all the way to the bottom, the vegetation is extremely dense. So that word dense means it's very thick. So at the bottom of these spots in the rainforest where the sunlight does reach the ground, that vegetation, those plants are going to be very thick. They're very thick plants, leaves. There's a lot of vegetation there. This is often referred to as the jungle. Tropical rainforests are what most people think of when they hear rainforests. They cover more of the earth than temperate rainforests. They are warmer and found along the equator. Tropical rainforests are called the world's largest pharmacy because of all the natural medicines found there. All right. So keep that in your brain. I'm blocking everything about rainforests in my brain. And now we are going to read about woodlands. Woodlands are forests that are not overly crowded with trees. Due to this, there's a lot of sunlight that gets to the ground. Grasses, bushes, and plants along the ground thrive in these areas. Woodlands have been struggling to survive, and they are constantly being cut down by people trying to build homes in those areas. There are also people who are trying to protect the woodland called conservationists. These people want to see the woodlands preserved as they are home to a large variety of animals. If a wooded area had so many trees that light struggles to get to the grass and bushes, this is no longer called a woodland. It would be considered a forest. All right. Now let's look at some questions. What is one similarity that rainforests and woodlands have in common? Remember that word similarity and common tells how they are the same. So I can go back and look, or I can just think back and I can ask myself, what do I remember reading about these two topics that might be the same? So I'm going to say one similarity, because remember, we always have to restate our question when we are writing our answer so that we make sure that it is written in complete sentences. One similarity between the rainforest and the woodlands is that, and then now we can go back and look. Well, I know that they all have vegetation, plants. They have, and they grow better when sunlight gets all the way to the ground. Plants along the floors are thicker, are more dense when the sunlight hits the ground. All right. Our next question. What is one difference between rainforest and woodlands? All right, so before I even go back to my text, I'm going to say one difference between rainforests and woodlands is that, and then now I'm going to go back and look. Well, let's look at rainforest. So rainforest, let's read this first sentence. Rainforests are highly wooded areas that receive a large amount of yearly rainfall. All right, let's look at this one. Woodlands are forests that are not overly crowded with trees. That could be a difference because a rainforest. Let's look at this sentence here. Let's continue reading. There are two types of rainforest: temperate and tropical. With all of the trees and leaves, it is normal for much of the sunlight to not reach the floor of the rainforest. Well, that tells me that rainforests have a ton of trees and that it's crowded with trees. But if we look at woodlands, it says woodlands are forests that are not overly crowded with trees. Think of these like the woods. The woods if you've ever gone exploring in the woods, think of woodlands as the woods. So is that rainforests are crowded with trees and woodlands are not. All right. Moving right along. This next question says, identify two types of rainforests. So this question is specifically asking about rainforests. So let me start my answer. The two types of rainforests are. All right, and we don't even have to worry about woodlands. We're going to go straight to rainforests, and we're going to start reading again. Rainforests are highly wooded areas that receive a large amount of yearly rainfall. There are two types of rainforests. Ding, 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 ding. Those are going to be temperate and tropical. So are temperate and tropical. All right. Last but not least, this question says, why do conservationists want woodlands preserved? So this one is more specifically about just woodlands or the woods. So let's restate our question. The conservationists want woodlands preserved because we are looking for a reason. So let's continue reading. Woodlands are forests that are not overly crowded with trees. Due to this, there's a lot of sunlight. We can skip that, and let's look for the word conservationist. Here. It says there are people who are trying to protect the woodlands called conservationists. These people want to see woodlands preserved as they are home to a large variety of animals. So, what is the reason that these conservationists want these woodlands preserved? They want them preserved because they are homes to a large variety of animals. All right. Now, for your assignment today, you are going to be comparing and contrasting some things from now and from before. So the directions say to please click the gray box below to access today's assignment. Look at the pictures on the slide that say then and now. Use the Venn diagram to compare and contrast the objects in the pictures. Remember, when we compare, we tell how two or more things are similar. And remember, when we contrast, we tell how two or more things are different. Finally, what you're going to do is you're going to click the blue submit button so your teacher can give you some feedback in Canvas. This is what your assignment's going to look like. If it loads properly, this is exactly what it's going to look like. All right. So you're going to look at things from then and now. These are ovens or stoves, whatever you call them in your house. Now, this is what our stove looks like. This is what we used to cook. Back then, this is what they used to cook, like way, 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 way back. So you would compare and contrast then, both, and now. So you're going to tell me some things that you see about then. Maybe what did they have to do? They had to light a fire. They had to put their food in a thing. They had to hang it over. It was a brick-like fireplace. And then you're going to go to the one that says now, and you're going to describe the one that you see now. Now ours are electric. We can plug them up. You don't have to light a fire. You can cook on the top and inside. And then both of them, well, they were both used for cooking. They both warm things up. And you're going to do that with 4 different objects. You're going to use the ovens. You're going to do lamps or lights. You're going to do phones. And then you're going to do houses. Just give maybe 2 or 3, if you can, differences, and then maybe 1 or 2 similarities. And after you're done, you're just going to hit submit, and your teacher will be able to give you some feedback. All right, boys and girls, hear from you tomorrow. Have a good day. Bye.